All right, welcome back to another edition of Mediocre Sports Talk. Come for the sports talk, leave because it's mediocre. Today I'm joined by my brother, but this time it is not John. This time, the Lord and Savior himself has come and graced us with his presence. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Marino.
Hey guys.
All right, so today we've got a lot to talk about. I kind of gave everyone a heads up that last week on the podcast that I wasn't going to be as active going forward, for a little bit anyway, just because I've got a lot of work stuff that I've had to deal with the last few weeks. I had an interview yesterday for a big job opportunity, and just a lot of outside stuff that's been taking up a lot of time. But so I apologize for not posting for a while. But we are back with the podcast, and what a day to do it, right? Those two big trades being announced back-to-back, Ezekiel Elliott being suspended. So we've got a lot to talk about, and I think a lot of it's going to be football focused, so let's just jump right into it. Sammy Watkins to the Eagles. What do you think about that?
Kind of a hard trade to look over, in my opinion. He's kind of mediocre on the Bills, and I don't know, just a weird guy to look into, I think, in every perspective.
Well, yeah, I think when you say mediocre, I don't know if you mean mediocre. I think you just mean that he didn't live up to the hype, right?
Yeah.
Or at least he hasn't so far. He's not a mediocre player, but he was hyped up to be like this transcendent receiver when he was drafted. I mean, the Bills gave up a lot to go up and get him, and we'll get into how much they did give up and how that trade worked out. But for right now, it's just, I mean, he just hasn't been that player. Not only has he not been that player, but he hasn't even been healthy a lot, right? So, I don't know. I think that, well, like I said, they traded a lot to draft him, so I think that, if anything, this just shows how much of a disaster that trade was. Screw it. Let's just go into it right now. Let's take a look at the 2014 NFL Draft. This is when Sammy Watkins was taken. Now, going into this draft, Watkins was talked of as, like I said, a transcendent receiver, as the best receiver in the class, someone who can change an offense. But I remember at the time, even when the Bills did trade up to number 4, with all the hype that Watkins had, I remember thinking this is a terrible trade for the Buffalo Bills. First of all, how do you trade for a receiver? How do you trade up to draft a receiver, no matter how good he is, when you don't have a quarterback? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, if they were sitting at 4 and they took Watkins, I understand. It still probably wouldn't have been the smartest move. But, I mean, you're going to trade up to draft a guy who catches balls, but you don't have anyone throwing? Like, who was their quarterback at the time? E.J. Manuel?
Yeah.
I think the Fitzpatrick era just ended, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it was E.J. Manuel Fitzpatrick at that time, actually.
Yeah, okay.
Switching between them, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's right, because
Yeah.
Fitzpatrick's first year with the Jets was 2015, although he might have been on the Texans that year.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, they didn't have a quarterback, right? And they go up and trade for Watkins. This is what they gave up for him. They were originally picking in the 9 spot. They gave up their first round pick, so like the 9th overall pick, and the next year's first round pick, and their 4th round pick, all to move up from 9 to 4 with the Cleveland Browns. Okay, now I should mention that the Browns did select Justin Gilbert. Well, actually, they traded up 1 with the Minnesota Vikings, and they took Justin Gilbert, who's a bit of a bust as well. He was hyped up as the best corner in the draft, and hasn't really done anything since. If I'm not mistaken, he just got cut this offseason or traded or something. So that didn't work out either. But, I mean, that's the Browns. They just don't know how to draft, right? But you look at that trade for the Bills. I think the first thing you have to look at, they trade up from 9 to 4. Okay, they give up their first round pick for the next year, a 4th round pick, and their first round pick that year. This is a team that, if you're going to give away that much, shouldn't you be already built for the now? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
I feel like this trade just, they were not a champion contending team.
No.
Not even close.
Not even close.
And you're trading away your future in the next year's draft. First round pick is obviously very important, no matter what team you are.
Absolutely.
Then to have Watkins be a bust is just icing on the cake.
Like I said, I wouldn't say necessarily he's a bust, just not as good as he's supposed to be, right? But Yeah, when you're talking about giving up that much of your future, like you said, a first round pick is important regardless of what team you are. Even if you're picking 32nd overall, like first round picks are gold in the NFL. You know what I mean? It's not often that a team ships over a first round pick, and when they do, it's usually a team like the Buffalo Bills or the Cleveland Browns making a stupid. Actually, no, the Browns are good at stockpiling picks, but it's usually a team like the Bills or the Rams or something like that that don't know what the hell they're doing, right? And yeah, they give away their future, and like you said, they're nowhere close to championship contender. They're not even a playoff team. You know what I mean? They were at best a fringe playoff team at that time, and they gave up, their future to draft a receiver when again they didn't have a quarterback. But then you also look at the draft itself. If you're gonna give up that much for Sammy Watkins, he better be like Calvin Johnson or Jerry Rice or Terrell Owens. You know what I mean? It's sad enough that he didn't live up to the transcendent receiver hype that he had, or at least hasn't so far. But let's look at this draft receiver-wise, okay? So Sammy Watkins goes 4th overall. A few picks later at 7th overall, you have Mike Evans. The next receiver you have taken, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. He's a young player, up and coming. New York Giants selected 12th overall, Odell Beckham Jr. Right? You know what I mean? Like, if the Bills wanted a receiver that bad, Odell Beckham Jr. got drafted at 12th overall, and the Bills had the 9th pick. Now, I'm not blaming them for thinking Sammy Watkins is better than Odell, although, if you're a scout, or if you're an NFL team, you should be able to figure out which player is better, but fine. A lot of teams didn't realize that Beckham was going to be quite possibly the best receiver in the NFL right now, right? So that's fair. But look at it from this perspective. On one hand, you can give up a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick to get Sammy Watkins, or a potential elite receiver. Or on the other hand, you can not give up any of that and draft Odell Beckham Jr., who, again, you might not think is better than Watkins, but I mean, if you're an NFL team, you had to know that he was good, right? The logic, and this is not a hindsight thing, the logic made no sense at all because you had so many guys to fall back on. You keep going through the list. So you got Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., who's the next receiver taken. I believe it was Kelvin Benjamin. Yeah, so you got Kelvin Benjamin. And then in the second round, the Miami Dolphins selected this guy named Jarvis Landry. All right? So, and then, oh my God, I didn't even notice this too. The Jacksonville Jaguars also selected Allen Robinson in the second round. Okay? Jordan Matthews was also selected in the second round, which came into play today because he is now a Buffalo Bill. Mm-hmm. So that came full circle. But you think of all the wide receivers drafted, Sammy Watkins is at best the 4th best receiver in the draft. Mm-hmm. Seriously, in that they traded up a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick. Well, technically 2 first-round picks to land at best the 4th best receiver in that draft. I would personally argue, without a doubt, Odell Beckham Jr. and Mike Evans and Jarvis Landry. Those 3 guys are without a doubt better than Sammy Watkins, and I will hear no argument against that. Okay. So that makes him at best the 4th. You can argue that Kelvin Benjamin's better. Would you say Kelvin Benjamin's better?
Yeah, for sure.
They both had trouble staying healthy and staying consistent on the field.
Yeah.
But
I see more in Kelvin Benjamin.
You know what? It's close. I feel like they're very similar in that they're both inconsistent. Mm-hmm. Watkins has got the speed factor on Benjamin, but Benjamin's got the size factor. Like, he can go up and get those 50-50 balls, right? They're very different but similar in their potential. But yeah, you can definitely make the argument that Benjamin's a better player. I don't think you can argue that Jordan Matthews is better. I would definitely say Allen Robinson is better.
Yeah.
I think Allen Robinson is like one of those guys, right?
Yep.
Like, do you think he's an elite receiver or on
the brink of elite at least?
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah, and I would agree with that.
Well, I see too. There had to I don't remember this time or this draft, but there had to have been some hype at least on the receivers in the draft. So I mean,
there was.
Would you trade up to 4 if there's hype on more than 2 receivers.
No, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely
That's how
right.
I see it, at least.
Because, like you said, before the draft happened, this was already regarded as one of the better wide receiver drafts in NFL history, right? And now it's proven itself to be one of the best in NFL history, maybe the best. It's a little early, but
yeah.
But look at these receivers, man. Like Jordan Matthews is like the 7th best receiver in the draft. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, he's nothing like he's no elite receiver or anything, but he's a good player.
One, and he would be up there, I think, in other drafts, definitely.
And many drafts in the past few years, he'd probably be the best receiver.
Yeah.
Right? And you have him as like your 7th best. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Going into this draft, you knew this was loaded with wide receivers, and the Bills decided to trade away their future to land the best one. It doesn't make sense. This is why Buffalo is what they are.
Yeah.
Right? They are, in my opinion, the saddest, if not the second saddest team in all of North American sports.
Well, a team that goes to the finals 3 years in a row.
4 years in a row.
4 years in a row. Loses every single one.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this isn't the first time that something like this has happened to a team, and it won't be the last.
No.
That's for sure. It'll always happen. But
well, I think teams are learning. Like, they're being more hesitant about giving away too much to move up in drafts. I mean, we'll see what happens with the Rams now after what they did to get Jared Goff the other year.
Yeah.
And then, well, you saw what happened with the Redskins when they traded up to get RG3.
Yeah.
That blew up in their face. I mean, they got 1 year of electric football, one of the greatest rookie seasons in the history of the NFL, and then
Injuries,
yeah, bad injuries, and 2 or 3 years of mediocrity. And now, he played for the Browns last season, couldn't even stay healthy there, and then I don't even think he's on an NFL team right now. So that like you said, it's one move in a long history of bad moves.
and it's just that one move can really affect a lot in the future, and that's the problem with it.
Oh, absolutely. You think about the Bills since 2014. They haven't made the playoffs since 1999, but like they haven't made the playoffs.
But they're not helping themselves in the future.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they haven't done anything since 2014, improvement-wise, because okay, so they got Sammy Watkins, they got their guy, who was at best the 4th best receiver in the draft. But okay, he made the offense better when he was on the field. He made the offense better. Yeah. Obviously, because he's their best receiver, but I mean, you have a guy who's Sammy Watkins is not elite. Maybe he will be one day, but so far he has not shown me that he's elite.
No.
Right? So you have a good receiver, not a great receiver, but a good one. And
that can't stay healthy.
And you missed out on drafting guys to build around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They still don't have a quarterback.
Yeah.
When was the last time the Bills even had a good quarterback? I don't understand selling the farm, so to speak. They didn't give up that much, but they did give up quite a bit. Like you said, first round picks are gold. They gave up quite a bit for a wide receiver. You have to be sure that he's Terrell Owens or Randy Moss or something, right? Like, and even then, like, a wide receiver is not going to take over a game.
I think a quarterback is definitely, like, you need to really build your guy at quarterback first. The quarterback runs the offense no matter what. He's the one that has the ball first.
You only go as far as your quarterback.
Yeah, I feel like trading up to get a receiver to complete an offense.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you're a championship contender too, which again the Bills were not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even close. They weren't even a playoff team.
Like if the Panthers did that after their 15-1 season, I know like Calvin Benjamin was hurt that year, but their receiving core without Benjamin was terrible. And so you think one of their few holes that year, like they had.
Because they had a good defense.
Yeah. Oh, they had one of the best defenses in the league.
Best, yeah.
I mean, at best second, because Denver ended up beating them because they had that historically great defense. And then on offense, you have a capable offensive line. You have Cam freaking Newton, who won MVP that year. Yeah. You have Greg Olsen. You have Greg Olsen at tight end. Jonathan Stewart at running back. All they were really missing was some good receivers. Like, you think Cam Newton had an MVP season without any good receivers? Ted Ginn.
Ted Ginn was probably their...
Ted Ginn.
number one guy. Or who Who was the number one receiver that year?
No, it was Ted Ginn.
Was it Ted Ginn?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Greg Olsen was their number one receiver.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, as an actual wideout, Ted Ginn was their primary target. And he still won MVP, so imagine if he had Kelvin Benjamin that season or someone else to pair him with, right? That's a team where it makes sense to trade up and get a receiver. I'm not saying they should, but it would make sense.
Yes.
When you're not even a playoff team, a wide receiver, and you don't have a quarterback, a wide receiver is not going to put you over the edge. No. My opinion, if you're building an offense, I think the first thing you have to do is build an offensive line. Because we've seen with many good young quarterbacks that if you bring in a young rookie and he doesn't have an offensive line in front of him, it could really hinder their development.
Well, look at Jared Goff in that game that he played. Yeah. He got hit a lot.
Yeah, he did. He got hit a lot last season.
Like, you don't want to see that with a young guy.
No, of course not.
First game.
But Jared Goff's not even the first person that comes to mind.
Oh, I know.
Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah.
Right? And I know, like, you know, we obviously pay a little bit more attention to the Dolphins than most people do, but...
Yeah, but he was the most hit quarterback in his rookie year.
Most sacked quarterback.
Yeah.
Not even just in Michael, not even just in his rookie season. He was the most sacked quarterback from the day he got drafted until the day he partially tore his ACL last year.
Wow.
In all those seasons put together, he was the most sacked quarterback, right? Same draft class, Andrew Luck, right? I mean, obviously, Andrew Luck is way better than Ryan Tannehill. Obviously, he hasn't really lived up to his hype yet, but he's shown that he's an elite quarterback.
I feel like he can live up to his hype if he has the proper weapons around him. They haven't given him anything.
Well, the problem with the Colts is that not only did they not have a good offensive line, they just decided to build an entire, not even offense, the entire team off of wide receivers and Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, Bills fans, it could be worse. You could be cheering for the Colts when you have all this potential. And
you can't throw to the receivers if you're getting sacked every play.
Well, yeah, also, receivers can't play defensive end or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Every year they're drafting. They finally woke up a little bit this offseason. They had a good one. Unfortunately, I think that, well, unfortunately for them anyway, I think that they had, they put themselves in a deeper hole than they expected, because even with their good offseason this past year, it's still not good enough, right? They went all defense this offseason, which is good, but it's still not good enough. You have, with the Colts, you have Andrew Luck, one of the best quarterbacks in the league that, you know, people can say that he's not elite because he hasn't, quote-unquote, proven it yet, but, like, no.
The place he's done with, like, what's given to him is just crazy.
Yeah.
You can't overlook that.
Yeah, of course, and he's just has nothing around him.
Yeah.
Right? No offensive line, no defense. And even receiver-wise, even though they went all in on receivers, it is just a bunch of good but not great receivers.
Just guys, basically.
Yeah, just as
T.Y. Hilton is not elite.
Oh, and people will tell you differently. I think a lot of people think T.Y. Hilton is an elite receiver in the NFL, and I don't agree with that at all. I think he's a very good player.
Yeah.
He's a good deep threat, but no, when I think of elite receivers, I don't think of T.Y. Hilton.
You can't build around him as your number one.
Exactly. If he's the best receiver on your team, but you're well-rounded, it's fine.
Yeah.
But when you're literally dependent on your quarterback and your receiving core, you need a better number one than T.Y. Hilton, right? Yeah, as Bob McCowan would say, they're just guys. It's just a bunch of guys on that team. But, back to the Bills. I just don't know what they were thinking with the original Watkins trade when they traded up to draft him. Now, I guess this is just a sign of throwing in the towel, saying, you know, we screwed up. It's not that, like, again, Watkins is still a good player, despite it being, like, trading up to draft him was a terrible move.
Yeah.
He's still a good player, but I don't know, what do you think about, they ship off Watkins to LA, which, to go on the flip side, I really like the move for LA because they have no receiving core whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like, you want to talk about a young quarterback?
Yeah, they don't have anything.
Like, I can go on all day about how you help a young quarterback, right? What does a young quarterback needs? He needs a good offensive line to protect them. He needs good receivers to throw to. He needs a good running back to take the load off him. He needs a good tight end to be a safety blanket, and he needs a good defense to lay back on. So he needs a good everything, right? Like, you know, you can go on all day about what a quarterback needs. You just need a good team, right? Is what I'm trying to say. But, you know, it doesn't hurt to have good targets for him to throw at, right? Who's the best receiver before Watkins got there? Tavon Austin. Right? Like, that's not good.
Which, yeah, that's definitely a no for number one receiver.
Yeah.
Even if you have a good team around him, I don't think Tavon Austin is going to be your number one receiver.
Tavon Austin's a gadget player, right? He's not like there's no argument that he's a number one receiver. I think he's got some skill. I think he brings a lot to a team, but not as a number one receiver, right? So they needed someone to bolster their depth on or their talents on offense. Sammy Watkins does it for them. I like the move. I really do. You got another guy for Goff to give the ball to. We'll see how Goff develops this season. I'm really interested in that since he didn't have too much hype on him in his draft year, and the Rams still kind of sold the farm to trade up to number one to draft him first overall. So he's going to be an interesting person to watch for the next few years. I don't think he'll ever live up to the hype because of the way that they drafted him and the fact that he wasn't supposed to be that good. But sorry, not live up to the hype because there wasn't that much hype on him. I mean, like, live up to the standards of a first overall pick.
Yeah. That
you trade so much to get, right? But he'll be an interesting guy to watch going forward. I think that the Rams, I don't know how they haven't built a good team yet with all the draft picks that they stockpiled for years using that RG3 trade. They have a pretty decent offensive line, if I remember correctly. I know Greg Robinson, who's actually drafted second overall the same year as Sammy Watkins, he hasn't lived up to the hype, but I believe that they do have a pretty decent offensive line. They've got some receivers now, and their defense is sick. I love their defense, so I don't think they'll make the playoffs or anything like that, but I think
they're getting closer.
Yeah,
they're doing it right, I think.
Well, they missed on a lot of draft picks, but yes, they are. They're trending in the right direction. Finally, I think firing Jeff Fisher was also a big part of that.
Yeah.
Their new coach, forgive me, I forget his James McVay or something like that. He's like 30 years old, and he's supposed to be like a quarterback whisperer, which is what everyone's looking for now, right? Like Adam Gase, Hugh Jackson, like everyone's just looking for quarterback whisperers. But yeah, I think they're going in the right direction. I think it's a great trade for them. They gave up a second round pick and what was it? Second round pick and something else. So they didn't give up too much. I think it was worth it, right? But for the Bills, I mean, let's see. I want to see exactly what they got in return. So the team announced that Sammy Watkins has been shipped to the LA Rams along with, and an advertisement pops up, unfortunate, along with the 2018 6th-round pick in exchange for E.J. Gaines and a second-rounder. So from what I'm reading, they essentially just received a second-round pick. Now, you look at that move, if that was the only move they made today, you just say, like, they don't improve for this season, but they get a second-round pick out of Sammy Watkins. I mean, it depends on what you think about the future of Sammy Watkins, right? But you can't look at the trade as just one trade right now because they did make two trades. So the second trade that the Bills made was they traded Ronald Darby for Jordan Matthews and a third-round pick. For those of you who don't know much about the players involved, Jordan Matthews, like I said before, drafted in the same year as Sammy Watkins in the second round. He's a slot receiver, a very big slot receiver, so if he's in the right offense, the right offensive scheme, you can use him well, right? Like, he can help your team. He's a red zone threat, but he's not he's not as good as Sammy Watkins. Like, he's not a great receiver, right? He's above average, but like, he's one of those guys that you have to use properly. Like, if you put Odell Beckham in any offense in the NFL, it's gonna work, right? Jordan Matthews, depending on the offense he's in, he can range anywhere from like whatever to pretty good, right? So they get Jordan Matthews in a third-round pick, kind of softens. So they get a third-round pick and a second-round pick total from both trades, and but they give up Ronald Darby, who's their number one corner. So I have to be completely honest. I think that this is the Bills. They're not exactly tanking. I mean, they'd have to go full Jets to do that. Trade off Tyrod Taylor or something like that. But I think they are kind of looking towards the future now. I think they realize that they're not going anywhere with this core. Like, they have a good defense, but it's not good enough to carry them. And their offense is just, especially before this trade, it's like Tyrod Taylor's pretty good, but he's not great. Sammy Watkins is good, but he's not great. LaShawn McCoy is very, very good, but he's not going to carry that offense. Offensive line is decent. Like, they're just so meh across the board.
Yeah.
And I think they realize that with this core, they don't have enough space to truly improve enough. And they're not good enough right now. So they need to start. I wouldn't call this a full-blown rebuild, but they're definitely looking towards the future right now. I think the big thing that happened today is that they basically went from Sammy Watkins to Jordan Matthews, which is a downgrade. Not a big downgrade, though. Like, it's a slight downgrade. And they got a second and third round pick for it, but they also lost Ronald Darby, which is going to hurt their defense. Yeah. That's huge. You lose your number one corner. That's massive, right? And this is a defense that underperformed quite a bit last year. They were expected to be one of the top defenses in the league, and they definitely were nowhere near that, right? What do you think about the trade?
I like it. I think now is a good time for them to start. I don't think a full rebuild is in order. I don't think so. So I think this is a good start. They still have a lot to do, I think.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of holes in their whole team.
Oh, yeah.
But they got some draft picks. So I think it looks good.
Well, I think they learned the hard way that they can't just give away their draft picks for nothing, right?
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the impact for the Eagles. First of all, we haven't even talked about the Eagles. I love the trade from the Eagles' standpoint. You know what I mean? Like, their receiving core was the following. It was Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, and Jordan Matthews. And from what I had been hearing before the trade, and now it's apparent after the trade, is that Nelson Aguilar had beaten out Jordan Matthews as the number 2 receiver on the team, right? And I guess they're both playing in the slot. I'm not really sure. But, so Aguilar had become more valuable than Jordan Matthews. So you think it's not exactly... that's actually a pretty decent receiving core with the 3 of them, but you have such a weak secondary, right? By the way, I think the Eagles have done a great job of really finding their holes and plugging them in creative ways this offseason. So the first thing they did was sign Alshon Jeffrey because they had a hole at like number 1 receiver. It was one of those things where without Alshon Jeffrey, they have a pretty bad receiving core, but with him it's good, right? Because they had just like a bunch of guys like Aguilar and Matthews hanging around. No number 1 guy to take it, and I think Jeffrey can be that guy, right? So you have a tiny surplus at receiver, especially now that Aguilar has beaten out Matthews, and you have a weakness at cornerback. Now you got Ronald Darby, right? Matthews became expendable, and Darby plugs a hole. I think it's a great trade on the part of the Eagles. Now, the interesting thing will be what happens to the fantasy value of the people involved. You look at... Well, I don't even know what happens to Jordan Matthews. I think Jordan Matthews kind of stays the same, right? Because...
Yeah, I think it depends on how he plays with Tyrod now.
Yeah, I mean...
I think he could have a good season fantasy-wise.
Well, he might be it's super weird because if you listen to Bills fans or even if you listen to Buffalo radio, they talk about the Bills having this amazing receiving core, but Jordan Matthews is probably the best receiver right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Especially with Watkins not being there.
Yeah, and well, even if you replace Watkins with Matthews, it doesn't matter anyway. But, okay, so he's the number 1 option for his team, but I don't think it's a team that will put up as many points as his former team, right? I guess his value might go slightly up. I just don't know how well he'll mesh with Tyrod.
Yeah.
Tyrod's the kind of guy who can sling the ball down the field.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Well, we'll see with Jordan Matthews, but I'm definitely not ready to like call him like a sleeper or anything like that. I think his value stays around the same.
I see McCoy getting more value now.
You think his value goes up?
I think so.
I think they were always going to lean on the run, but yeah, you're right. This is definitely a sign that they're going to lean on the run this year.
Yeah.
But then you have Sammy Watkins in LA. His value is definitely down, right?
Yes.
Like he went from, again, Watkins can get down the field. Like he can burn corners on deep routes, and you have Tyrod Taylor who can really sling the ball. Now he's going into a situation where he's still the number one receiver, like he was on his former team. But this is an offense. I mean, the Bills' offense didn't really scare anyone, but the Rams' offense doesn't scare anyone either, right? You're going from a weak offense to an even weaker one, and you're going from a quarterback who was kind of fearless and would throw the ball down the field to one who, I mean, what is Jared Goff right now? From what we saw from him last year, like he came in halfway through the season against the Dolphins, played the last half of the season, and I mean, he started to get a little better, but for the most part, it was just, I mean, his first game kind of told the whole story. It was just, he didn't know where to throw it, a lot of throwing the ball away, getting sacked, checking the ball down. Like, he just does not seem comfortable in an NFL offense. Like, when he got drafted, the reason they wanted to leave him on the bench all season, the Rams' decision to put Goff as the starting quarterback halfway through the season baffles me to this day. But he seemed like the kind of guy who needed more time to develop, and I don't think there's any evidence just to suggest that he's developed enough, right? Doesn't seem comfortable in an NFL offense at all. Again, he'll be one of the more interesting guys to watch going forward, but I think Watkins' value goes way down. You just can't trust. He was always inconsistent. Now you can't even trust his quarterback to get him the ball.
Yeah, Watkins was very hit or miss.
Yeah.
Where he would have like a good game, and then the next game he would have a terrible game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like those good games were based on like gunslinging by Tyrod and just big touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't see that from Goff at all.
No. Yeah, I think his value goes way
Like
down.
you were saying, he's a very protective quarterback, being new and underdeveloped.
And they're definitely going to rely on the running game even more than the Bills.
Yes.
I think they're just going to try to make Todd Gurley their bell cow back, right? So yeah, it's just, I don't know. It helps Gurley in a sense that the defenses have something else to worry about. They have to worry about Watkins now because there was no receiver to be heard of on the Rams before. But I could see him getting double teamed a lot, and I could see them just running the ball like crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he'll struggle this year, statistically anyway, for like fantasy purposes. Then you have in Philadelphia, you have the whole Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar thing. So with Matthews out, I think Aguilar's value has to go up.
Yes.
How much does it go up? I don't know. I don't think it goes up. Okay.
I don't think it goes up much either.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not being like, oh, I'm gonna draft Nelson Aguilar in the 4th round or something like that, right? I think he's someone that you take a chance on late in your drafts because again, he's the number 2 receiving option on Philadelphia, and I think that's an offense that's gonna be really good. Like their offensive line is one of the best in the league, like top 3 worst at worst, and what's it called? They've got a capable quarterback in Carson Wentz. He kind of dropped off halfway through the season last year, but I'm hearing a lot of good things about him.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see Wentz. If he can live up to the potential that he has, that could be a great offense. It could be a really, really good offense. They just need a running back.
Yeah, it'd be really good to see him and Alshon.
Yeah.
That would be...
So I think Aguilar's a guy you take a chance on late. Has a lot of upside. And then Alshon Jeffrey, how does this affect his fantasy value?
I think it's going to be huge this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he's going to be one of the top receivers.
Top 5, I think, at least.
Well, top 5 is big, but I would definitely say top 10. I don't know about top... Well...
If Wentz lives up to his potential, I think.
Yeah. But you think, like, top 5 receivers in the league, would you put him above Antonio Brown?
No.
Julio Jones?
No.
Odell Beckham Jr.?
No.
Mike Evans?
I don't know.
I think Mike Evans...
I think Mike Evans have a big year, but I think Alshon could compete with him this year.
Okay. I mean, I think, like, the Buccaneers' offense in general is going to fly. I think the Bucs' offense is going to be... That will be a top 5 offense in the league, right? Okay, that's arguable. What other receivers would you put in the top 5 above Alshon Jeffrey? No, he's got... No, that's not that good a situation there. Jarvis Landry, no?
No, I wouldn't put top 5.
Brandon Cooks.
No.
No, I people are over exaggerating with Brandon Cooks going to the Patriots. Oh my God, I'm drawing a blank on good receivers right now. Oh my God. There are so many good receivers that we're not thinking of right now.
DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins. Would you put him above DeAndre Hopkins? That's a good one because Hopkins
fell off last year.
He's clearly talented. He just doesn't have. But does he have someone to throw him the ball this year? Is Tom Savage real, or is Deshaun Watson going to take over the offense?
I think it's safer to go with Alshon as a.
Yeah, because you know the quarterback.
He's good. He's
been
good, and Carson Wentz looks good, has good potential. So.
Yeah, you know, you might have a good argument. I will 100% commit to him being a top 10 wide receiver. I don't know if I would say top 5, but I think you have a good argument for him being top 5, right? Because I think he will have a big year. I think Wentz is young quarterbacks tend to lock in on one guy, and if he's gonna lock in on one guy, it's gonna be Alshon Jeffrey. Jeffrey is like made. If you want to talk about a wide receiver, if you had a wide receiver that you were to build in a lab to be the perfect receiver, you would build him a lot like Alshon, right? He's big. He's got a big body, like a big wingspan, so he can go up there and get those balls at their highest point. Makes him a huge red zone target, which, if you've been listening to this podcast long enough, you know that I'm obsessed with red zone targets, right? Like you need that guy who can just go up there and get it, right? And he's got speed for a guy that's as big as he is, right? So that's what you want in your number one receiver. You want a guy that is big enough that you can, not check it down to him, but like he can be a possession receiver if you need him to. He can be a deep threat because he has deceptive speed, and he can go up and get it at the highest point. And to that point as well, he can be a red zone target. Like he could just be so many things for your team. And I think Alshon's that guy. Wentz is going to lock in on him because he's a young quarterback. And Alshon also needs to prove himself this year because he's in a contract year. Last year he had to do the same, but he ended up getting hurt. And his quarterback was Matt Barkley for most of the year. It was Jay Cutler for a little bit, but Cutler didn't play much. He was hurt. Also, I think Cutler was checked out in Chicago. The team just sucked last year, right? So, I'm really interested to see Alshon. I think he's going to have a big season. And I think this will play a part in it. Anyway, staying on the topic of the NFL, this is kind of old news by now, especially with everything that happened today. But what do you think about Jay Cutler being the starting quarterback of the Miami Dolphins?
Jay Cutler, I think he's probably their best candidate to take over the starting position.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone else could have been better than him in the free agency. But me looking into it, I'm not 100% convinced. I know they say he's looking good in off season already, but I don't know how to even look at it. It's just a weird situation.
Yeah.
But he has a good offense around him, so I think he's a smart guy. I think he can work with his offense, especially with Gase.
Yeah.
Him having his best season with Gase before.
Yep.
I just think it's a hard situation.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I think people are over-exaggerating both ways. Some people think it's going to be a disaster because, Jay Cutler's this, all he does is throw interceptions, yada, yada, yada. And then other people are like, Jay Cutler's going to be MVP this year, lead the Dolphins to the promised land, all that crap. But if you look at it, all hot takes aside, like I said in my article that I wrote about him a few days ago, I think this is just a football move that makes sense for the Dolphins. Like you said, what other candidate makes more sense than Jay Cutler right now? There's only one that you can argue, because if you go with Matt Moore as your quarterback for the entire season, you're done. You know what I mean? Like,
he's a good backup. It's just he can't start 16 games.
Yeah, it's like I said this last week on the podcast, is that Matt Moore is a capable backup, because if you have to go into 2 or 3 games with him as your starting quarterback because your quarterback is hurt, that's fine. You can survive with that, and you can win a few games with him. That's exactly what they did last year, right? But he will not be your quarterback over 16 games. Or he will not. If he is, he will not lead you to many wins. You know what I mean? He's got a really strong arm. but he makes a lot of dumb mistakes, and I don't know why people are ignoring that. People are acting like he was like a genius last year.
There was even so some of the big plays he had last year too. He kind of just didn't even look and threw it up, kind of, and it was caught.
Especially the one against the Cardinals.
And yeah, nobody really looked into it as like a dumb throw. They just said they kind of praised him.
Yeah,
after that. But you have to look into it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people also forget that he played. Quite frankly, he played like dog shit against the Bills last year. In the game that they clinched, he was one of the reasons why they almost didn't clinch, right? It was Jay Ajayi who did it on his own, really. He threw some back-breaking interceptions, you know what I mean? He also fumbles a lot for some reason. It's really weird for a quarterback to fumble as much as he does. But, yeah, you cannot go into a season with him as your starting quarterback. If you do, you are basically saying to the league, we're at best going 9-7 and probably missing the playoffs, at best, right? Even with the talented offense that they have right now. Then you look outside of Matt Moore, the only guy worthwhile talking about other than Cutler is Colin Kaepernick, right? And you have to compare the two. Who do I think is a better player right now? Well, they're two totally different players, but I think that Kaepernick is ready to play this season because he always expected to play this season, whereas Cutler was in retirement. So that kind of at first put Kaepernick over the edge for me. But then when your quarterback gets hurt before preseason starts, I mean, obviously your biggest worry is that you now need to find a replacement for the most important position in all of sports, and he needs to be one of like the 15 guys in the world that are good at it, because there aren't many guys who are good at quarterback in this world, right? That's your first worry. Your second worry is even if you can find a guy who's capable enough to play quarterback for your team, he needs to learn the system in a month, right? And the thing with Cutler that makes him so valuable compared to any quarterback in the world right now for the Dolphins, I mean, that isn't elite, obviously, is that he knows Gase. He's comfortable with Gase. He's already shown that he can play well in Gase's system because that's the best year of his career, statistically speaking, was when he played with Gase. And when I say statistically speaking, it was like top 3 in touchdowns in his career, top 5 in yards, but number 1 in interceptions. It was the least interceptions he's ever thrown in a season where he played 15 or over 10 games, right? Because he played 15 games that season. So he's shown that he can play well with Gase, and also you think with Cutler, the main reason people get on his case is that he throws so many picks, but he had a 21-11 ratio that year. Is that good? Like, is that elite? No. Like, Tom Brady was like a 28-2 ratio last year, right? But, for a guy that they say throws too many picks, that's much better than you expect. 21-11. He's had seasons where it's like 18-18, right? So, I think they did the best with what they had, right? I think he knows how to work in Gase's system. He's shown in the past that he can be a good quarterback. People were picking this guy to win MVP just like 3 years ago, right? And it's because when he plays on a good team, he has the arm talent, right? And he's not the smartest quarterback, but he's definitely smarter than Colin Kaepernick. And he's not, I wouldn't say he's a stupid quarterback, right? So you got a good running game for him to fall back on. You have one of the best receiving corps in the NFL. Like, you got Jarvis Landry, Devontae Parker, Kenny Stills. I wrote an entire article about it a few months back about how, on paper, they have one of the most loaded, most perfect receiving corps in the league just based on everyone's skill set and what they bring and how it balances out. Julius Thomas is going to be interesting. He's another guy who had his best years, not even just his best years. He was a top 3 tight end in the league when he played for Gase for 2 seasons. And then in Jacksonville, he just kind of fell apart. But we'll see if he can go back to his old ways with Gase. That'll be interesting. And, Cutler's a guy who likes to rely on his tight ends quite a bit and check it down to his running backs. And the offensive line is interesting. It's definitely not good. It's definitely not bad like it has been in the past. It's kind of in the middle somewhere. Their core pieces are good. They have Laramie Tunsil looks like he can be an elite left tackle. Jawan James at right tackle has been very hit or miss, but if he can just figure it out this season, I mean, he was a B+ player for his first year or two years in the league, and then really took a step back last year. But if he can get back to being a B+ player, that's more than enough. And then Mike Pouncey at center, when he's healthy, he's one of the best centers in the league, maybe the best center in the league, right? It's just the guard positions that they're very, very thin at. And I think they're really hoping that Matt Asiata, who is he was a 5th round pick this year, I think they're really hoping that he can be one of those sleeper guys in this past year's draft that can really make a difference, especially with Ted Larson getting hurt. But, yeah, he's got the offense around him. He's got a great coach. It's the best with what they can do. And I think all things considering, the fact that, can you really tell me that this team is significantly worse going from Ryan Tannehill to Jay Cutler?
No.
Right?
Tannehill's not elite.
No. He hasn't lived up to his potential yet, but even his potential isn't elite.
Yeah.
Right?
He looked really good in the offense, and I don't know about you, I was really excited to see him this year in the offense.
Yeah.
But he hasn't really proven himself yet, so you can't say that that's a step down.
No. If it is a step down, it's very slight, right?
Tannehill being more athletic and that he can run and stuff is a big thing, but...
Absolutely. Well, I think oh man, I feel so bad for Tannehill. This was his year to really prove it. Every time he has a chance to prove it, something happens. And the best quarterbacks will prove themselves regardless of the situations around him. But he's not an elite quarterback. He just needs to prove that he was a good quarterback. And he had no offensive line and terrible coaching. When he first got drafted, do you know how bad the Dolphins' offense was? Their best receiver was Brian Hartline. Their offensive line was worse in the NFL. And Joe Philbin was his coach.
Yep.
And Mike Sherman was his offensive coordinator.
Yep.
It doesn't get any worse than that. Then you think, okay, they finally fixed the receive. Well, no, actually they didn't really. Not for a while. They signed Mike Wallace. That was their solution. And obviously that didn't help. But then they drafted Jarvis Landry. So then they started to fix the receiving core because he became their number one option. And they drafted Devontae Parker. So then they started to fix the receiving core. The offensive line, they didn't really start to fix until... signing Brandon Albert was big, but it didn't. You can't just fix your offensive line by signing one left tackle for a big contract, right? It wasn't until they fixed the coaching thing by taking out Philbin and bringing in Adam Gase that they started to fix the offensive line as well. And now that he's had a full... And then last year, his whole thing was that it took him a while to get used to Gase's system. The first 5 weeks of the year, he was terrible. Then he had the best 8-game stretch of his career, and then he partially tore his ACL, right? So, it looked like this year was finally the year where everything was in order, and it would just be on him to prove that he is who he is, and now he's out for the season. Yeah. So, it's just unfortunate, but yeah. Fantasy-wise, I don't think this changes any of the receiver's value. He's going to force the ball to Jarvis Landry. Yeah. He's going to target Julius Thomas and Devontae Parker in the red zone. And Kenny Stills is your deep threat, right? I don't think it changes any of their value. If anything... Sorry.
Ajayi's load stays the same, I think, too.
If anything, it gets higher. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if Cutler's not as good as they hoped, then...
Especially because he's coming at, technically speaking, he's coming out of retirement, but even last year he barely played because he was hurt. I think, especially at the beginning of the season, they're going to really lean on Ajayi. They're definitely going to be a run-first team this year.
For sure.
So I think Ajayi, I would definitely say, is a top 5 running back.
Yeah.
In fantasy. So, look out for that.
Even, as a Dolphins fan, I'm happy about that, because I've always wanted them to be a run-first team.
Yeah.
And Ajayi is, he's just... Seeing him last year is just great. First down, he gets 5 yards. That's what you want out of your running back.
Yeah. Oh, he's a workhorse, man.
Yeah.
I think he's the type of guy that could really... And the thing is, they can be a team that really relies on the run, even if Ajayi is a little injury prone. But they have so much depth at running back that they're okay. They got Kenyon Drake, Damian Williams. They've got a few guys that can take over. Not elite running backs behind them, but Kenyon Drake's got a lot of promise. He's going into his second year.
And he can catch, too.
And yeah, all of them can catch. Ajayi's by far the worst pass-catching running back on the team, and he's not even that bad either, right?
I don't know about Damian Williams dropping touchdown passes, but...
Well, usually Damian Williams is actually a very good pass-catching running back, but I know what you mean.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting what their defense looks like as well. Their secondary isn't strong. It's not weak. It's just very mediocre. They've got a bunch of number 2s there.
But possible potential.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so you got Byron Maxwell, who I think is like the perfect number 2, but unfortunately he's their number 1. You have Xavier Howard, who they're hoping breaks out this year. The thing I see with Howard, I think his upside is that he'll become a low-end cornerback 1, and I think his floor is that he's a low-end cornerback 2.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's kind of safe just because you know that you're probably going to get, at worst, a number 2 cornerback, but at best, you're only going to get like a not that great number 1 quarterback, right? And then you have Tony Lippett, who's just former receiver, so he's got good hands, gets a lot of interceptions, and he's very fast, just also very raw, because like I said, he was a receiver for all of college, not a cornerback. So he's a cool kind of project they have going on. For what we expected from him, he had a very good season last year, right? And he's really starting to emerge. Byron Maxwell's not long for this team just because those 2 guys are taking over, and with Maxwell's contract, either they're going to go with those 2 guys as the primary corners or they're going to draft a corner next year. But Maxwell's not long for this team. Then you have, at safety, you have Rashad Jones, who's one of the best safeties in the NFL.
Yep.
Is probably, besides Ndamukong Suh, their best defensive player, and an elite player at that. And then beside him, you have Nate Allen, who I think is hurt right now, but he should be ready for week 1. And you have the guy from the Rams. What's his name? Hold on, let me look him up right now. But besides that, their defensive line is always going to be a strength. They've got Ndamukong Suh at DT, which is always going to mean that your DT is good. And you have that position covered. At defensive end, you have Andre Branch and Cam Wake. Last year that worked out great. And you have some depth there with Charles Haley and guys like that. And they just drafted Charles Harris in the first round. And then, I said Charles Haley. I meant William Hayes. I kind of put them together. But the one thing that worries me is that DT, besides Sue, Jordan Phillips they drafted him in the second round a few years back. He was supposed to break out, but he's really struggling. In fact, he isn't even their number 2 DT this year. They have some random guy. I don't even know if they drafted him or if he was an undrafted free agent, but he's actually beating out Jordan Phillips right now. So that's pretty worrisome. TJ McDonald was that other safety I was thinking of, and he's suspended for the first half of the season, but when he comes back, that could be a big difference maker for their secondary. Because him and Rashad Jones, if McDonald returns to his form, that could be one of the best safety duos in the league. Now, the really worrisome part about their defense is at linebacker. They have Kiko Alonso and Lawrence Timmons, those are 2 good linebackers that are kind of well-rounded, but their third linebacking, their depth is so bad at linebacker that I'm not going to try to pronounce it, Raekwon McClellan? Whatever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he was supposed to, when a second-round pick as a rookie wins your third starting job before preseason even starts, even guys like Ray Lewis aren't named the third starter until at least halfway through preseason, right? When he's already named your third starter before preseason starts, it's not a good sign. Now, when that same player tears his ACL in the first preseason game of the season and is out for the entire year, now you're in trouble. They don't have a third linebacker, right? I think they're gonna roll out 2 linebackers most of the time and go with a nickel defense, but when they need 3 linebackers, it's gonna be a lot of trouble because they don't really have anyone. Do you think they're going to pursue anyone in trade or free agent? See,
I can see them definitely signing somebody, but I don't think it would be somebody that could start. I think they could sign someone for depth. Well, if they're going to go for a third linebacker, I think they'd go for a trade.
Yeah, it's definitely possible.
Which would have to either be draft picks, which I wouldn't like,
or a receiver.
Yeah,
because they have a surplus at receiver.
Yeah.
Even Leonte Carew at receiver is looking good in preseason right now. The only thing is, so a lot of people are bringing that up, trade a receiver for a linebacker, but more teams have a surplus at receiver than they do at linebacker. In fact, almost no teams have a surplus at linebacker. So it's going to be very hard to find a team that will take a receiver for linebacker trade-off. So that would be difficult. The one free agent I can see them. I'm not saying it won't happen. You can even trade a draft pick. I'd rather not because that's not a smart move for the future.
Yeah.
But I can see them doing it, especially if it's only like a 4th or a 5th round pick. But don't be shocked if they go out and sign a guy like DeQuell Jackson because he's still a free agent.
Mm-hmm.
Is he going to change your team? No, but he's probably better than anyone that they have.
They need a linebacker.
They need someone to put in there.
They need somebody.
He will be a weak spot on their defense, especially at this point in his career. But I'd rather it be him than
nobody.
Some undrafted free agent or like Mike Hall or something like that.
Yeah, you don't want to throw somebody that's not even close to putting themselves on the field.
Yeah, if they don't sign or trade for anyone right now, Mike Hall is probably their 3rd linebacker, and he's a special teams player.
Yeah.
So I think DeQuell Jackson is the safe route to go. We'll see. I don't think he'll take much money either, so I don't think there's any reason not to do it. But
well, they could sell him and then look into somebody else too.
Yeah, it's true.
To have depth.
Yeah. But
the only problem is you sign him that your linebacker core is pretty old too.
Well, it would only be a 1-year thing, and then you go back with Raekwon next year, and at least you give.
You could look to draft again.
Yeah, and then you give Raekwon a year to get like implemented into your system as he's on the bench. I don't know. We'll see, but yeah, definitely don't be surprised if DeQuell Jackson to Miami becomes a thing. So yeah, that's the Dolphins portion of the news. Now, something again that's more recent. It was just announced today. They kept saying it wasn't going to happen. Jerry Jones said there was no chance, but Ezekiel Elliott has been suspended for 6 games. Now, he has 3 days, I believe, to appeal, but I don't think, in most cases, I don't even know if it can be lowered to 0 games, but even if it can, like, it probably won't. The most I can see it getting reduced to is like 3 games. But Ezekiel Elliott, potentially 6 games on the bench. That's a big deal, right?
That's huge. Elliott was a big part of their offense last year.
Oh, he was their offense.
He was, the true rookie of the year in my eyes.
Oh, yeah.
That's like even just losing your running back in general, even if he's not as good as Ezekiel Elliott, is a big fall.
Well, especially when you're a run-first team, right?
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if I'm a Dallas fan, I am worried right now.
Yeah. 6 games is a lot, too. If they don't get it lowered, 6 games is almost half the season.
Oh, well, yeah, and in the NFL, 6 games is everything, right?
Yep.
Like, you can lose your entire season in 6 games.
So how many games would you think they would have to win without him?
Have to win?
To stay.
It depends on who they're playing. I'm going to look up the Dallas Cowboys schedule right now. I think that people are really underestimating how much of a fall the Cowboys can have this year. Like, they were the number 1 team in the NFL last year based on their record, but I don't think people are realizing that look, their defense was good enough last year. You know what I mean? It was a very mediocre defense, but it was just good enough that their offense was putting up enough points that didn't matter. And their offense was amazing, right? But now you have this issue where your most important player on offense is out for 6 games. A lot of people argue that the biggest part of their offense is the offensive line because it's been the best in football for years. They've lost some depth on offensive line. They had Doug Free, their right tackle, just retired. They lost their left guard to the Denver Broncos. Like, even though they have like Leo Collins to plug into the line, they just lost 2 starting offensive linemen. There is not an offensive line in the league that doesn't feel some sort of hit depth-wise. I don't think they're the best offensive line in the league anymore. I would pick the Eagles' offensive line. I would probably even pick the Raiders' offensive line over theirs. You know what I mean? And that's huge because part of the reason their offense was so dominant the last few years is that their offensive line was by far the best in the league. You couldn't touch the quarterback. You couldn't touch the running back. Now, that offensive line, it'll still be good, but it won't be as good, and you're missing your most important player on offense, and that's Ezekiel Elliott. Now you're forcing Dak Prescott to carry the offense, which is something he has not done in his career yet. He was not supposed to do. So you look at their first 4 games of the season. They got the Giants. That's a loss. They have the Broncos. That should be a win. But it's the type of game where without Zeke, could be a loss.
Mm-hmm.
It really just depends on if the Broncos' offense, which is terrible, is better than the Dallas Cowboys' defense, which isn't great. I don't know. Because they're going to have trouble scoring points. That Broncos' defense is still amazing. It's still one of the best in the league. Now you're looking at a Cowboys offense that's one-dimensional because you're missing the running game. You're missing as good of an offensive line. And, well, okay, yeah, they have Des Bryant, but that secondary is still the best in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They have 3 corners that could be the number 1 corner on any other team. Like, that is it's a definite win with Zeke, in my opinion. I don't know if it's a win anymore. I think I'll still pick them, but it's not a definite thing. The Cardinals are kind of similar. The Cowboys are too good to lose to the Rams. The Packers, that's another one that I think I'm definitely giving to the Packers now without Zeke being there. 49ers is another one that there's no way they don't beat the 49ers.
Yeah.
And then he comes back for the Redskins game. I don't know, man. That could be a solid. I think with Zeke, their record is 1, 2, 3,
4-2 at least. I think.
At least 4-2.
Yeah.
Without Zeke, it could be 2-4.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not saying it will. It could be 3-3. It could be anything. But this is going to be a huge hit to their season, and I really think the Giants are going to be amazing this season. I think that the Giants are, even without Zeke getting hurt, I would have picked the Giants to win the division. This could cost the Cowboys a playoff spot, in my opinion. This is huge news. And then fantasy-wise, you have quite possibly, actually most likely the most valuable player in all of fantasy, and now he's out for 6 seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where do you...
6 weeks.
So, 6 seasons. 6 weeks. What does that do to his draft value? Right? Like, where do you pick Ezekiel Elliott?
It was just like Bell last year, though.
Yeah.
Bell
yeah,
suspended for 4 games, I think it was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's still top 3.
But it's going to hurt guys who draft him. Now you have to draft him knowing that, your top guy is not going to be able to help your team.
You have to
for almost half the
You have
season.
to pick 3 starting running backs. That's kind of easy to do. 6 games is a lot,
This is huge. And in keeper leagues, this is going to hurt guys too.
and if you look at fantasy too, it's 7 weeks because of the bye.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Oh my God. He's out for half the season in fantasy.
Yep.
That is insane. Yeah, this is gonna. Well, I mean, you know what? No, I would definitely not have him at the top of my draft board.
No, yeah, it's half
Like,
the season.
You can't have someone at the top of your draft board that's out for half the season.
You can't. How do you pass up on Ezekiel Elliott?
Well, it depends who's there. I don't like it. It depends who's there. Here,
It's a hard situation to look at. That's for sure, because he's still at least top 3 running back in the league, right?
Well, yeah, I think he might be the best.
Le'Veon Bell.
That's debatable.
Yeah, it is.
It's debatable.
It is.
I don't know.
But who would you pick over him?
Well, that's what I'm going to look up right now. I want to look at a list of the top fantasy running backs and see who I would draft over him right now. Okay, so without a doubt in my mind, David Johnson, Le'Veon Bell. He's not suspended this season, is he?
I don't think so.
I feel like every year he's suspended. So, David Johnson, Lev Bell, without a question.
Yeah.
Because those two with Zeke are like the big 3 in fantasy right now, right?
Yep.
So David Johnson, Lev Bell for sure. LaShawn McCoy, I wouldn't say that before, but probably now, yeah, because he's gonna put up really good numbers and has a better chance to play the whole season, right?
Yeah.
Melvin Gordon, I don't know.
See, it's tough when it gets from Melvin Gordon, Devonta Freeman, even Ajayi. Because those guys can have huge seasons. It's just, can you pass up on Zeke for the last half of the season and in the next seasons if it's a keeper league?
I will tell you this much. I would definitely take Devonta Freeman over him. I know from Devonta Freeman I'm getting elite fantasy production.
Especially with that
for
offense.
the whole season.
That offense is just...
Exactly. And for the whole season. I would take Jay Ajayi over him too.
Yeah.
I would think about Melvin Gordon. Yeah, this list has him at 7th.
Yeah.
That's crazy. This is it's gonna put fantasy owners in that position where, and this happens almost every draft, there's always those few guys where it's like, you hope he's not available when you're picking. Because it just puts you in a really awkward, like...
Do I pick him?
Yeah, like, shit, he's the best running back in the league, but I don't have him for half the season.
I think if it's a non-keeper league, for sure I'd pick someone else over him.
Yeah.
7 weeks?
Yeah, that's the other thing. If it's a keeper league, you also have him for the next year, too.
Well, yeah.
This is...
It's hard.
So, it's one of those things where you could be looking at, especially in like a keeper league, you could be looking at Zeke available in the second round somehow, and then it's like, okay, it's the second round and Ezekiel Elliott's here. How do I not pick him, right? And then if it's not a keeper league, you could be in that rare position where Ezekiel Elliott's available in the third round, right?
Maybe even later.
Even later. Like, this is crazy. It's going to be an interesting thing in fantasy drafts to look out for is where does Ezekiel Elliott end up? And it's really going to hurt their actual season, so...
Another guy I just saw on this list that's interesting to me is Marshawn Lynch.
Oh, I'm not touching him. Me and John talked about it a few weeks ago on the podcast. I'm not touching Marshawn Lynch. Are you?
He's Marshawn Lynch at the end of the day.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do I trust him? No.
No, you can't.
You can't. But would I take a chance on him? Yeah, I think I'd take a chance on him.
It depends where you're drafting.
That's what I was about to say. It depends how far into the draft you are.
See, in my opinion, if you're drafting as your third running back, yeah, I'm completely
100%.
fine with that. If you're
Second,
drafting,
no.
Yeah, if you're drafting as first or second, but that's where he's probably going to go is around that area as your first or second running back. Because the problem is, do I believe in Lynch? Like, yes, he's obviously been an elite running back for years, and he's in a good situation. Like, that's an offense that's going to score a lot, and he's their number one running back. But he's been out for a year, and you cannot replicate. He can work out as much as he wants, but you cannot replicate NFL game speed.
Nope.
Right? So, yeah, that's I don't trust him. If you're drafting and you have your entire wide receiver lineup set, like your top 3 receivers, and you have your top 2 running backs, and you're debating between Marshawn Lynch and like a quarterback, then yeah, I would probably take a chance on Lynch, or a tight end or whatever. I would take a chance on Lynch as your third running back, but definitely not if you're plugging him in as your first or second.
No,
it's too risky.
It is.
All right. Do you want to talk about Neymar? Or?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see how long we're at. Take an hour and 110. 420 blaze it. Okay. That'll be easy to remember where I have to edit. 420 blaze it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, if you want to shift away from football, we can talk a little bit of European football. Talk a little soccer. Neymar went over. Well, yeah, it's official now. He's going from Barcelona to PSG. PSG spent like $5 gazillion on it. What do you think about that move?
There's a lot to look at in this transfer. Looking at both teams, so Barcelona, they actually put that floor on how much they would sell him for, thinking that nobody would actually do it.
Well, yeah.
But when someone offered it, how do you say no to that much money?
Yeah.
It's really, I think in looking at Neymar's perspective, I love it. I love what he's doing. I love the way he's gone about the media. I love everything that he's done about this transfer. I think it's perfect for his career. Because I think, first of all, going to Barcelona was actually a good decision for him. I think because he started off in Brazil. And no one really, everyone knew he was good, but he wasn't one of the elite. But going to Barcelona and being Messi's shadow was good for him and his career, helped him build it up. Messi helped him out in many aspects of his game, one being passing. He became an elite passer in Barcelona. But I think going to PSG for him is a huge opportunity for him to prove himself. He would be their offense. He's running their offense there. So I love it for him. PSG, I mean,
it's too much.
You got an elite guy. You got one of the top 5 players playing right now.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
But is like how is somebody worth that much money? That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I mean, their offense is gonna run nicely now.
Yeah.
They're gonna be a good team. They're gonna they're gonna win the league. They're gonna win. They're not gonna win Champions League. They're gonna go further in Champions League. Because when they lost Ibra, they kind of fell off.
Yeah. Well, they almost beat Barcelona last year.
Yeah.
Well, that
but
huge
they
comeback.
always, Barca and PSG always have those battles.
Mm.
And if you look at it now, it's going to be even better. If they face each other in Champions League this year,
yeah,
it's going to be nice to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at Barcelona, I think they're still fine.
Yeah.
They still have Messi and Suarez up top. So I think they're going to shy away from the 3 up top unless they sign somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
But their team is still full. And they have a lot of depth.
Well,
so.
Yeah, I think like when you look at what happened to them last season, they had probably the best offense in the world for any team. But I think what they learned is that they weren't deep enough beyond that.
Well,
right?
they were number 2 under Real Madrid.
I would take Barcelona.
No, but like statistically, Real Madrid had the best offense.
Whatever. I don't care about statistically. They had the best.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, you know,
yeah, on paper, yeah.
They're down. What was it like 3-0? They needed like 4 goals against PSG.
They lost 4-0 in the first game.
Yeah, they're the only team in the world that comes back from that, right? Because they have that 3-headed monster: Neymar, Messi, and Suarez. It doesn't get better than that, right? But I think what they learned, especially when they bump into a team like Juventus that focuses on defense, is that they need something else, right? They need defense, right? Because they were definitely not going to pull a comeback like that against Juventus, a team that could defend. So when they gave up a few goals to Juventus, it was over, right? But so I think they realized that we can't just rely on our offense. I think they have the money to buy a defense, even if they don't sell Neymar, because they're Barcelona. But for the money they gave up Neymar for, they could definitely afford to buy like depth out on defense and on their midfield.
They can, but the thing is they can't make the same mistake that a lot of these teams make. Looking at a team like Juventus, the way they do it is, it's actually like beautiful to watch. Where they get these guys for cheap or even free, and they build them up to be Paul Pogba or Dybala and all these guys. And I think if Barca does it the way that Juventus has been doing it, I think they could be like especially with those guys already that they have, they can be like elites, like one of the best teams of all time if they follow in those footsteps.
It's true, but you have all that money. You gotta spend it, right?
There's been a lot of times where teams have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on Pogba.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say Pogba was a bust, but he wasn't. He was supposed to be the best player in the world.
Well,
on United.
He'll never live up to the. I see what you're saying, because he'll never live up to that.
Could. It was $100 million, and Higuain was bought for around 100. I think he was worth all that money that we spent on Higuain.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I just don't think that, in my opinion, no one will ever live up to being bought for $100 million.
Yeah.
Right? If you're going to spend that much money on someone. I don't know. People expect him to be perfect, Pogba. So.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But if he played as good as he did on Juventus, it would have been different. People would have been talking different.
I don't even know about that.
They would have made the Champions League without having to make Europa League. Without having to win Europa League.
No, I guess. I agree with what you said about from Neymar's perspective, especially during that PSG game last year. I kind of started to understand this is a guy who just wants to win, right? And he wants to be the guy. He wants to be the best in the world. And like you said, he developed under Messi for a while, and that was good for him for a while. But if he wants to be considered the best in the world, he has to play without Messi beside him. He'll never be considered the best as long as Messi's standing right beside him, right? So this is his chance to do that. He's going to a team that's good, but not as good as the team that he's coming from, and he's going to carry that offense. So I love it from, like you said, from Neymar's perspective, it's great. From PSG's, I think it's stupid. There is no player in the world that is worth that much money. How much money? They had to pay like $400 million or something like that. Right?
Yeah, and even, I mean, you could say it's stupid, but like Neymar is one of the best in the world. But now they're having to like They might sell Matuidi to Juventus. They have to sell a lot of guys now
Yeah.
to get some of that money back, at least some of it.
That's what I'm saying, right? So then now, is Neymar better than all those guys they're going to have to sell combined?
Well, I think their plan is to build around Neymar now.
I guess. I just don't, like, if you're going to spend that much money on a guy and have to sell all those players just to make up for that money, he better score like 12 goals a game, and that's not going to happen.
They also have a lot of young guys, though, that are cheap.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I know you can't get an elite player, like a player at Neymar's level, without spending that money. But again, if you're going to spend that money on someone, like, it's going to be impossible. We talked about Pogba living up to the standards by that transfer fee. Neymar, it's impossible to live up to that. God couldn't live up to those the money that they spent on him. They spent almost $500 million total on him, right? $500 million. He has to single-handedly win Champions League for the next 5 years to make up for that, or it's not worth it. I don't know. That's the way I see it.
See, but soccer is tough to look at in that way. So, you know, these guys are like, you're not gonna get Messi or Ronaldo or Neymar for anything less.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, well, like me, when I look at this, I like teams building up their guys, like Barcelona did with Messi. He went there when he was like 15 years old.
Yeah.
So I like that better. But I feel like if they want to, I mean, $400 million is a lot to lose.
Mm-hmm.
But if they want to rebuild with young guys, I think it's possible. I think they could do it, and these young guys are close. So I think they're gonna sell like these guys like Matuidi who are getting older, and who else is there? Thiago Silva, and all those guys.
Yeah.
And I think it could work out.
I don't doubt that they can build these young guys, and I don't doubt that it can work out. But I'm just saying, like, if they win Champions League this year, is it worth $500 million for one player? Does that make it worth it?
No, actually.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's just too much money for one individual person. You know what I mean? They could still build the young guys without Neymar there.
Yeah. And
it's just so much money.
When we looked into the Pogba thing, how they sold him for $100 million, or they bought Higuain for $100 million.
90 million.
90 million. They also sold Pogba for $100 million and then used that money to buy Higuain.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, like now, like PSG's kind of doing it backwards, where they just like, I think this transfer can put a team into debt. Any other, because they're one of the big teams. They're the biggest team in France.
Yeah.
So, I think they can handle it.
Yeah.
But it could be very detrimental. And there's no way Neymar's gonna have a bad season too.
No, I agree with that. Are you picking PSG to win Champions League?
No.
So, there you go. Like, it's just, I don't know. I just don't know how you spend that much money. There's just no way you can live up to that money. That's
It's definitely interesting to look at, though.
Yeah, it'll be, and like 10 years from now, it'll be interesting to look at it in 10 years. So, I don't know.
And I gained a lot of respect for Neymar too.
Well, I mean, okay, wait. At the same time, he did go to a place where he wants to win and stuff like that, but he's making quite a bit of money to do it, right? Like,
but he is not
like he's a saint.
I didn't think he would ever move away from Messi.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And that's why I like it, is because he moved away from the second best player in the world.
Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying he is making quite a bit of money to do it. Like, it's not all about being
I know.
He's making a lot of money.
Yeah.
But yeah. All right, I think that about does it for this episode. Thanks for tuning in once again. As always, I'll be posting more blog articles at www.mediocresportstalk.wordpress.com. And I'll be posting episodes of this podcast once a week. Michael?
Thanks, bro beans.
Okay, well, just ignore that part. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for listening to another episode of Mediocre Sports Talk.